This is Rogers TV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson, a personal finance show focused on moving you forward financially. On today's show, we are talking back to school. Polls show that Canadian parents are prepared to spend to get their children classroom ready this year. And those surveys also show that parents are dreading it due to the costs. But you don't have to break the bank or take on debt to prepare for your child for their classroom. There are ways you can reduce the costs associated with getting the kids ready for back to school, and our guest today is an expert. She's a mom of 6, a recovered lawyer and co-founder of Mabel's Labels, an award-winning entrepreneur, speaker, and media personality. She's also the best-selling and award-winning author. Her book is called Like a Mother, Birthing Businesses, Babies, and a Life Beyond Labels. Julie Cole, welcome back to Money Matters. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Shannon, great to see you again. I love this topic, so thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And of course, the timing is perfect. But before we really get into it, can you call yourself a recovered lawyer, and I love that. Can you talk a little bit about your background?
Yeah, for sure. So, yes, I'm in recovery. It's going well. No official 12-step program. But so basically, I say that very tongue in cheek. I'm just not practicing at the moment. I was doing law until I launched Mabel's Labels 21 years ago with my co-founders. And that came about for a couple of reasons. One, there was a product missing from the market. And the second was that the eldest of my 6 children was diagnosed with autism. And I didn't think the traditional workforce was going to suit my family's needs. I wanted a little more flexibility. And since we had this great idea for a business, I was like, okay, gals, now's our time. And 21 years later, no regrets.
Absolutely. And of course, as a mother of 6, you're obviously that parenting expert. So we're going to sort of get into our back to school discussion and really go into it a little bit. So, of course, it's that time of year. As I mentioned before, we're all getting ready for back to school. I myself am in the throes of it. And surveys are showing that parents are prepared to spend to get their children back to school, even if it means going into debt and sacrificing necessities. There's a number of polls that have come out, and I'll try to summarize them as best I can. But there was one from the Retail Council of Canada that said 85% of parents will spend the same or more as last year that they spent on back to school. Another survey from Deloitte says that Canadian families plan to spend an average of $586 per student for back to school. There's also a survey from Credit Karma that mentions that parents are really dreading this extra cost this year. 44% of parents are feeling a bit of a dread when it comes to this extra spending and possibly taking on debt in order to get through this time of year. The same survey, 31% of parents say they're not able to even afford the back to school costs coming up. More than half of parents say that this is due to either the high cost of living that they're dealing with, but also the increased cost of the actual supplies that you're buying. There was a statistic that said that the cost of these supplies have actually increased by 24% in the last 2 years. So there's a number of factors that parents are faced with, and also the amount that they're planning on spending. It ranges anywhere between $500 to $1,000 per child. So Julie, when you hear these types of numbers, are you surprised to hear what parents are willing to do in this back to school season?
You know what? I'm not actually surprised, and that's because we parents are ridiculous. Honestly, like the way that we will make choices because we think what our kids need and we want to keep up. We want to, obviously, as parents, we want to give our kids the best. We want to put their best foot forward. We feel like we're setting them up for success when we give them all the things and all the stuff. And I think this is one of those like low-hanging fruits, like, well, if I set them up with all the perfect school supplies, then they're going to be successful at school. So it's sort of like an aspirational thing that happens in parents' minds. And the impact, as you say, is actually, it's very impactful because it family finances are, affected.
And when I hear things like they're willing to sacrifice just basic necessities, I mean, that's a huge thing that, like you say, we as parents want to do the best or what we feel is the best for our kids. But we're going to get into sort of some tips as we move on into the show about how people can maybe reduce this type of stress that they're feeling. And so when I think it's important that parents realize that you can reduce this stress. There are ways to get around this. So one of those things I think to help reduce this is to set up that back to school budget. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having that budget in place and sticking to it before we start our shopping?
For sure. And, that's the point, Shannon. Don't like make a budget and then ignore it. Like that's the very point of having a budget is sticking to it. And I find with my kids, it's most effective when we sit down together and we figure out what our priorities are, what our needs versus wants are. And also just making sure the school is going to provide you with a list. You don't need to go rogue, right? Like they're going to say what you need. Stick to the list. Try not to be like shiny objects in the store and filling up that cart and seeing what the other moms are putting on Facebook that they're getting their children. Stick to the list that the school provides and figure out what that's going to cost, knowing those wants and needs. And I actually, make the kids make some tough decisions. It's good practice for life, right? Start them right young, Shannon, right? Am I preaching to the choir
Absolutely.
here or what?
For sure. For sure. Do you have any other tips about how to try to set up that budget, but also reduce the costs as they prepare?
Yeah. Look, there's a bunch of things I do. And those are things like at the end of the school year, I don't just like get rid of everything. Also from an environmental impact, we go through all our supplies. Okay, what pencil crayons just need sharpening? We might not need new pencil crayons. Okay, let's see what erasers still have a bit of life in them. So we do a little inventory on our school supplies and what can be salvageable. I also believe in spending money smartly. So I do buy a good backpack. And then, my kid is heading off to university this year with the same backpack I got him in grade 9, because that to me is an investment. I also make sure with the school uniforms, I'm like, okay, what still fits? Let's see what the moms on the Facebook marketplace have for sale whose kids are at the same school, and I can buy secondhand and I can sell secondhand. So there's a lot of that stuff going on. If you join your like online mom communities, you can save money there. So there are places. I do try also to buy off season. I know right now we're all like, must have all the things right now. You may not need all of the things right now. Like, again, go to the list. But if there's some bigger purchases later, some Bristol board things, some science project stuff, you don't need that right now. And you might get it off season. You might get coupons. You might be able to do a bulk order with other parents. So don't feel the urgency, because when we feel urgency, I feel like that's when we make bad spending decisions. It's like when we do the grocery shopping hungry, right? And we buy too much food. Yeah.
And now you segued perfectly in the next part, because of course then we're heading into school. We're preparing those dreaded lunches every morning. I think it's the bane of our existence as moms. Yeah. But do you have any advice on perhaps saving some money at the grocery store when it comes to our lunch prep every day?
Yeah. And I think that's a great question, because that is really impacting families. I know, like when my 6 kids are home and I go to Costco and do a shop, like I need to sell somebody's kidney to pay that bill. Like it is like, it is very expensive, and families are really feeling the crunch on ever since COVID, the price of food has gone up. So I do a couple of things. I make sure that I invest in really good containers so that we are not buying prepackaged stuff, because that stuff is a couple of things. It's expensive. It tends to be sugary and salty, so not as healthy. And I feel like the environmental impact, the kids aren't learning stewardship over their own belongings. So of course, I mean, I'm Mabel's Labels, right? So obviously you're going to label all the containers so they make their way home so that you're reusing them. So there's a lot there. So I definitely will try to buy like my fruits and things in bulk. I have to buy them often. But I also do a lot of batch cooking. I never make a meal for just one night. I make sure there's leftovers for lunch. I put things in the freezer. So that way you can buy things in bulk. You can buy bigger items and then put them in smaller, like put them in the Ziplocs in the freezer. So I think that is a really great way to go. Just making sure not only from a financial perspective is it good, but I think it's good for a health perspective and also environmental. So there's lots of good reasons you should, and involve your kids, like they can be coming to the grocery store with you, prioritizing what they want, what kind of fruit they want, and making them understand, like, you know what, when they come home and they haven't eaten those strawberries, and I'm like, do you know how much I spent on those strawberries, right? So making them part of the process. And when they see, wow, look, I've got strawberries, this should be my first snack of the day over the like cookies or whatever. So just again, I'm a big fan of involving them and being transparent with them about costs so that they understand.
I'm a big fan of the slow cooker because you can make a large amount at once and have leftovers. But then I've also discovered a dehydrator. And so I've started to dehydrate some fruits for my daughter, testing out what she's going to like so that she can take those. Of course, they're going to store for a long time in the pantry. But then I've got those extra snacks that she can take with her to school.
And they're healthy.
So those are the two.
That's the dehydration's a great tip, Shannon. Yeah, I love that.
Let's switch now to extracurricular activities. The Deloitte survey said that 80% of parents plan to enroll their kids in extracurriculars, and the average cost of that every year is about $582, which actually that seems low to me.
It does. Yeah.
Maybe I'm comparing it to the activities that my daughter is doing. But do you have any advice for parents about maybe keeping those extracurricular costs down?
Yeah, look, a couple of things. I think, again, we need to manage some expectations here. Our kids don't have to be doing all of the things. They don't have to play rep sports. They can have a very good team experience by playing house league sports. They don't have to be doing competitive dance. They can be doing recreational dance. That way you're not spending it's a racket, like what people are spending on like the costumes, the extra rehearsals. And I think, we've got to remember that why we're doing these things. I mean, as parents, our kids are not projects. Don't go into it thinking they're going to be at the National Ballet or they're going to be playing in the NHL. We want them to have the experiences of working with peers, of problem solving, of learning teamwork. These are the lessons that are going to take them forward, and they don't have to cost a lot of money. And I'll tell you a lesson I learned hard through COVID, which was a great lesson, was kids, it's okay for kids to play on street hockey. It's okay for kids to have a paper route. Like these are things we don't have to be, they're at school all day and then rushing around all night and going through those drive-throughs, again, spending a lot of money, not eating healthy, not having that quality family time because we're rushing around. So I just, when parents are always trying to keep up, I think that's problematic, and it's also expensive. And there are ways to, like for me, with all these kids, I often was able to get a group rate. Like when I had 3 daughters in hockey, once you pay for 2, your third one's half price. With my 3 boys, once you pay for 2, ask the questions, right? See if there's a family discount. Often there is. And again, if you register early, sometimes they'll reward you for registering early. Or I always do this, and it's not feasible for everyone, and I want to acknowledge my privilege here, but I always pay up front, because often when they say if you pay the full year, you get a 10% discount. And for me, because I'm able to do it at that point, and I like saving money, I will always go for that option.
Everything you said so far has been really great advice for our younger kids. after the break, we're going to focus on preparing our older children for post-secondary school. So stick around, and Money Matters is going to come right back.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hi, can I take your order? Hello?
Oh, hey. Wait, what was the question?
Let me guess. One driving high combo, extra baked?
No. Could I get a burger with a side of fries?
Think you're a better driver when you're high? Think again. Smoking weed affects reaction time and concentration. A message from Mad Canada.
Welcome back to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. My guest today is Julie Cole, award-winning entrepreneur, co-founder, and senior director of Mabel's Labels, Inc. She is a speaker, a parenting expert, and a best-selling author of Like a Mother, Birthing Businesses, Babies, and a Life Beyond Labels. And we're talking about back to school today. And Julie has been sharing some really great advice for parents on getting our younger kids prepared this year. But now we're going to shift our focus and talk about our older kids who might be heading off to post-secondary college or university, because we all know that this is very expensive, usually. According to a past poll, college and university students and their parents will spend an average of $1,366.95 just to prepare for the first year of post-secondary. Now, 43% of people say that this is because they need more new items, but also 32% attribute this to needing more big ticket items like a computer, perhaps an updated phone, furnishings for our dorm rooms, and things like that. Now, the bigger concern at this point in time for parents is the added stress of knowing if their child is ready for life on their own, especially when it comes to managing their finances. There was a survey from TD Bank that said that 66% of parents are not highly confident in their child's financial knowledge. And students even admit that they have challenges dealing not only with the stress of dealing with their finances on their own, but preparing and working with that budget, paying for the tuition fees, managing their living expenses as they move into post-secondary. So when you consider these concerns, I think it's a really crucial time to have that really important money talk with our older kids. And part of that talk obviously is going to focus on budgeting, but there are ways that parents can help prepare for that. So Julie, of course, as a parent of 6, you've been through this. You're in the throes of post-secondary education right now. What is your advice for parents who want to have that money talk with their older kids?
Right. Well, obviously, start younger, but if you're having that conversation now, I think having that budget conversation, as always, and figuring out, the needs and wants, yet again, that applies across the board. And I do believe with older kids, it's really important for them to have skin in the game. So having that conversation of what is it that, parents are going to cover, what is it that the kiddo is going to cover? And then you actually find out a little bit more about how big those wants are. Suddenly, when they're having to contribute their own hard-earned money, they suddenly might not want all the things they said they previously wanted. And, for my big guys, I'm always talking about, when they want to make a purchase, I'm like, okay, so how many hours did you work to pay for that sweatshirt? And they're like, ooh, that was 3 hours of work. That brings it, that really brings the reality in. Do you want to flip burgers for 3 hours to buy a sweatshirt or a hoodie? That might make you rethink things.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think it's useful if you have that written plan out for your older kids? Should they continuously be looking at that and making sure they're staying on track?
I actually think it's good practice. And I think it's, if they have a weekly budget or a monthly budget, and I think it's actually okay for parents to be doing check-ins with them, maybe on your Sunday night call home, be like, okay, how are your finances looking? Let's have that conversation. I think one of the problems, Shannon, this is what I love about the kind of work that you do, is that people are hesitant to talk about money. Money is one of those things that, and I think we need to be talking with our kids more openly and more freely and having these conversations, because that will increase our financial literacy. And I think a reason a lot of parents don't do it is because they're not confident in their own financial literacy, and they may not be budgeting well. So if you find you're a parent in that cycle of not being great with money, not budgeting and sticking to your budget, then it's even more important for you, because you may not have role modeled that so well. It's more important for you to even be having those conversations and those lessons with the kids, and pulling in the professionals if you need to.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, there are many budget templates that you can find out there, and even the websites for the universities and colleges, perhaps that your child might be attending, may have those templates on there. So I encourage either students or parents to have a look at those resources as well, before or as they prepare for this post-secondary journey. Now, of course, living away from home means more freedom. I remember that well. And young people, we're tied to our devices. I say we because, really all of us are almost tied to our devices. And so we get that external influence. You talked about that earlier. Do you have any advice for parents for their kids about how really to be aware of what these influences are and what they're trying to do?
Right. So when it comes to spending, I think there are these influences. You can get lured in. And again, I mean, I'm seeing it with parents too, right? Like I'm on a lot of Facebook groups, and I'm on one with a bunch of moms who are it's like dorm room moms. So kids are going away for the first time, and it is competitive shopping on that site. It is. And like, you should see what they are doing to these kids' rooms, these dorm rooms. They are spending thousands of dollars on throw pillows and decorations for these dorm rooms. And I think it's just really important to be transparent and having these conversations with our kids, saying, look, we're seeing that, we can see how this influence happens and how you get pulled into these things. And again, having these conversations and being like, what really matters. And what I try to do in these groups and just with my kids is try to normalize not that, so, I go on the group, I'll be like, hey, I've got my fifth kid starting in a dorm in university this year. And I've said, I have not bought a thing. And I'm loud and proud about it. I feel like I'm a very good mother. And, he's got the bed cover from one of his siblings. He's got the fan from one of his siblings. He's got the shower dolly caddy thing from one of the siblings. Like, I am not just going to go and buy things for the sake of buying things but I mean, I see so many of the moms saying, I feel like I'm not a good mom because I have not bought this duvet, or I have not bought, the special rug so I think when we're transparent about the things that we're getting sucked into, and understanding and being empathetic to the influences that they're feeling as well. And again, keeping those open lines of communication. And as far as budgeting, like, I do think, parents, it's okay to, keep the training wheels on for a bit. They're just learning how to use their money. They're just learning about these things. So if you want to have those conversations and be checking in for a little while till you're confident that they're able to manage their finances completely independently, that's fine. I kind of do the training wheels with phones too. Like, hey, let me see your phone. And I'm like, yeah, you're appropriate on social. You're appropriate in your text. I'll take the training wheels off and check less frequently. But I think that's our job as parents, is to guide them and then, let them go. Roots and wings.
Yes, I agree. Now, of course, the highest cost of post-secondary is tuition. Yeah. Heading into this semester, fall of 2024, the average cost of post-secondary, a 4-year post-secondary program in Canada, will cost $75,000. In Ontario, unfortunately, it's even higher. It's more like $86,000 here in Ontario. And unfortunately, many students are going to be relying on perhaps government student loans or student lines of credit from the banks. Do you have any advice for parents or children on how to manage this student loan debt wisely?
Right. So a couple of things just going into that. Like, yes, there are government loans that are available. I would say also look for grants. There are hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of unclaimed grants every year that your child might be eligible for. And there are some random ones that you would not even think. So make sure that you're checking out the grants as well. I think, again, with our kids, like if you are wanting to make the most out of this, you need to stick to that budget. You need to think about, one day I'm going to have to repay this back. What does that look like? And from a parent perspective, like, look, Shannon, you know this, I've got kid number 5 starting university. I have 4 in post-secondary education this year, and 1 that just graduated and is planning on going back next year. So for me and Daddy-O, it has been a lot of planning. So from the moment they're born, we are doing RESPs, we are doing savings, we are doing being smart about putting our money where we could get tax breaks. If you have a child with a disability, make sure you're getting the disability tax credit. There are lots of things that you need to be looking to and talking to wise people like Shannon about to make sure that you're getting the most out of your buck.
All of that is really good information. I want to shift just a little bit, because that first day of school, kids are going to walk in to the main lobby of their school, and it's going to be filled with tables from the major banks signing kids up for credit cards. And I experienced it, and every other kid is going to experience it as well. Can you just talk a little bit about, there are risks to having a credit card, but there can also be benefits. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the risks are, and again, this is a conversation to have, is that, you can spend money you don't have. And the risk with that is that you do that, and then the interest rates are ridiculous. And, I saw a mom posted on Facebook recently, and she said, look, my daughter, her credit card is maxed, and I just pay the minimum for her every month. And I was just like, I'm enraged. I'm like, why are you cut that up? Or like, why are you even paying this? Does she understand? And I was like, does she understand interest? And again, I think sometimes parents don't necessarily understand. So these are the risks with credit cards. But I mean, for my kids, I do have them sign up for credit cards. I advise them to, because we do want to, get that credit score. It's good practice for them. Usually I like them to have a cost on there. Like my son maybe has a gym membership. So that's on there, and it gets paid off automatically. And, my kids know that they would be like out the door. I would just murder them if they ever didn't pay off their credit cards in full every month. That is how it's got to go. I mean, people who let those credit cards, like the interest rates, I can't even with that, right, Shannon?
It's so true, because they're so convenient, which is wonderful to have. But being conscious of every time you tap that card, you have spent money, and you need to repay that money.
That's right.
And obviously that can have benefits. If you're paying it off at the end of every month, then yes, that's going to help with your credit score, help with your credit report.
Sometimes you get points.
Good thing.
You can get your points, right?
You're getting your rewards, all of that. But it really needs to be a conscious decision every time you tap that card. So I think that's so important for our older kids to start to understand.
Shannon, I was going to say too, I do think, because I can kind of feel it in myself as well a little bit. Sometimes you tap it, it's not as painful as like handing over cash, So there's something psychological with it, but we got to make sure that they understand, like, you got to like right now go and pay that.
Absolutely. Well, Julie, we've given such great advice today. How can viewers reach out to you, follow you on social media, and most importantly, how can they get your book?
Yeah, right. Okay. So you can find everything about me at mabelslabels.com/Julie Cole. There you can order my book. There you can see where I'm speaking next. There you can see, the advice I give, shows I'm on, all that jazz. So just go to Mabel's and socials. So you follow me on socials, they'll be listed there as well. So mabelslabels.com/Julie Cole. And actually, why don't if anybody wants to go to Mabel's Labels and get some labels so you don't lose all the stuff that you've spent all the money on, I'm giving you a coupon code Julie15.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie, for being here. And I want to thank our viewers for watching. Until next time, I'm Shannon Jackson.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
For 25 years, you've been helping to make our roads safer by doing the right thing. You've been the